Okay, the next inductee to the Australian Media Hall of Fame is Gerald Stone. Gerald Stone. Congratulations. Gerald, take us through how hard it was, how challenging it was to set up 60 Minutes in Australia.
Well, it was pretty hard with a man who said, I don't give a fuck what you do, but just do it and get it right. But it was challenging because everybody would say it was an American ripoff, and it had the American format. It was quite a different program in Australia because Australia didn't have that many good stories to tell. I mean, it was a small country. So we had to go overseas, and I think that's where we made our mark, is by showing people what happened overseas. People might not care about what happened in Nicaragua, but they might care about what George Negus did in Nicaragua.
You had such a great collection of reporters. There was George Negus, Ray Martin, Ian Leslie, Jan Event, who's here tonight. Who was your favourite?
Now, that's a very good question. Well, questions don't always need to be answered.
You don't have to answer that.
Yeah.
Hey, it is a Melbourne Press Club event.
Yes.
You have a very interesting story about coming down to Melbourne on a job shortly after arriving in Australia in the first place.
Really, because, it's 55 years since I migrated to Australia, and I came to Sydney as my first stop because I knew the editor, Zell Raven, there. But he sent me off to Melbourne, and there I learned the big difference between Australians and Americans. Americans, so idealistic, and Australians more laid back and cynical. But I went to a press conference, and afterwards I was invited by the people in Melbourne, the journalists, to go down and have a drink, as journalists did. And I listened, with greater and greater horror as I heard them knocking everything about what was happening in Australia. The food was bad, the Sheilas didn't put out enough, the unions were crazy, and so on. I said, I couldn't stand it anymore, and I said, the trouble with you Australians is you're always knocking your own country. And there was a long pause, and then somebody said, if you don't like it, mate, why don't you fuck off?
And Gerald Stone, we're glad you didn't. So ladies and gentlemen, congratulations, Gerald Stone.
Thank you.